All right, guys, welcome to the Investor's Guide of Memphis Real Estate. I'm your host, Dean Harris, and as always, I'm with Douglas Skipworth. How are you, buddy?
Hey, man, doing great.
We're bringing you this podcast to give you the boots on the ground knowledge to be an experienced and successful investor here in Memphis, Tennessee. Please like and subscribe to the Investor's Guide of Memphis Real Estate on your YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, wherever you want to listen to this to the show. Show sponsors are listed on your screen below. We would not be able to do this show without them. We've got Triumph Construction, River City Title, Cortland Financial, CrestCore Property Management, and Will Griffin over at Griffin, Clift, Everton, and Mashmeyer. I help buyers and sellers every day. Dean at CrestCore.com. If you have any questions whatsoever about buying or selling investment property, owner occ, I don't care. We're able to handle it all for you. So Dean at CrestCore.com. Got that out.
Yeah.
You know, no one tells you when you're on a podcast that you basically got to memorize an entire page worth of data to get the thing started.
Intro.
So today, man, we're going to dive right into it. How do I sell my investment property? As we're coming into the new year, Douglas, I am getting, I won't say flooded, but I'll say I'm getting steady emails, requests, calls. How much is my property worth? You know, I'm thinking about selling it. My tenant's moving out. I'd like to move it, or whatever the case may be. I'm getting more and more of those questions. So I thought today's topic would be great to talk about. How do you sell your investment property? What are some things you need to do? So let's get it ready. If the property is occupied, my first thought, you know, is to make sure that your tenant is paying that market rent. Too often we see a property go on the market, $100,000, and the tenant's paying $750 in rent. That's tough to overcome with an buyer. Now, I can look at that objectively and say, okay, I've got a month-to-month tenant here.
Okay, that's different.
I can, or 2 or 3 months left on the lease, or whatever it may be, and the market rent's $1,000 or $1,100, and if the home's in good shape, I could kind of make an exception and move on.
Yeah.
But a lot of investors don't. As soon as they see $750 in rent, they think, well, that must be the market rent, even though everything around you is telling you that it's higher. Yeah. That will scare some investors off. So the very first thing that I said that I would be doing if I had an occupied rental property to sell is make sure that your tenant's paying market rent.
What do you tell people if it's not? What in that scenario and they're and they got
$750 rent,
10 more months on the lease.
So when I put my sales hat on, when I'm talking to a buyer, it changes from, look, you're missing $250 in rent. You got 8 months left. What's that? $2,000. You're going to lose out on $2,000. So what I would do in your mind is just change the beginning date of your ownership.
Yes.
To 6 months.
Right. That's right.
Just work for free for a few months. You got a great house. You got a good house and a good rental area. Remember, this is so cliche, but we're not buying the tenant. We're buying a house. We hear that all the time. But you're not buying that tenant. You know, if they don't want to pay market rent, that's okay. You did an inspection on the front end. You have a general idea of the condition of the house, so you're expecting and prepared for that rehab. Yep. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it, right? So I would, if I'm the seller, I immediately go to my property manager. I go to the tenant. You know, we need to pay market rent and get that up. If you can, if you're under a lease, still sell, still list. It's just a different conversation that I have with the buyer, right? Good. So I'm able to overcome that. That's a great question. You see that more often than not. One of the reasons why they think they want to sell is because it's rented too low. Yes. And I'm scared to, a guy said this yesterday. I couldn't believe it. We're listing his house. Yeah. This is where I got this.
Yeah, good.
$750 rent. Yeah. and the market rent was $1,000 to $1,050, and the house is probably worth $110, $115, and of course he wants $110, $115. And we just had the conversation like, maybe we can get that, but one of the things that I'm going to have to overcome immediately is that you're below market rent. First thing out of his mouth. First thing. I'm scared. I was scared to raise the rent. I thought they'd move out. Like, what? You can't run a business that way. We can't run a rental business that way. Scared they're going to move out? No, you move them out and get market rent. Yeah. So anyway, maybe you need to change the way you buy if that's the case, right? Maybe you bought a home that needed more work. But anyway, my point to that was I can overcome both of those. I would encourage you to try to get to market rent. If you're on a month-to-month lease, you can do it now. If you're under a lease terms, you'll just need to do it at the end.
Yeah, that's good. Quick pause, because I thought about that too, is just to decide, hey, there are situations where, like on a long-term hold or a long-term tenant, where you will, I know I've done this, I think you've mentioned before you've done this, where you will make an exception of keeping a property below rent market. Yes. But it's not one you're planning to sell, and it's not one you're trying to get top dollar for, and it's not one, there's got to be a good reason for that, and it's not a you have to know it's not the best practice, and you have to have a good reason why you're making that exception.
I probably would say I agree with that. I don't know, and you would probably agree with this. I would go below market rent on some of mine for that right tenant.
Yeah.
In this situation, like $250 or $300, I'm not sure that I do. That's tough.
For that long,
$50, $100.
Right. Yes.
You know, because the tenant they do really well with taking care of the home,
Correct.
or they pay on time, and
Yeah.
I have no worries, and da 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 da. Yes, I can make some exceptions. $250, $300. I feel like we got to get closer to that.
That's good.
So,
That's good.
you know, my next thing after I've evaluated my tenant and my rent, we've done a good job already now of we've raised the rent, or we have a tenant paying market rent. That's what you should be doing if you want to go back to number one. You should do this from the beginning. You shouldn't wait till it's time to sell to raise your rent. You need to be at market rent all along and listen to your property manager.
That's right. I mean, you're doing inspections annual, whether you're getting an annual or biannual, 2 years
right.
leases.
Yeah.
Then turn around doing inspection, and we're doing this all the time. So.
That's right. How's your overall condition? You got your tenant in there. What does the condition look like? This is the biggest debate or the biggest kind of unknown when I go list an investment property is the condition, especially if it's occupied, right?
Yes.
Because you never know when the tenant moves out, kind of what that looks like. So when you're selling it, you need to determine if you're going to sell it as is or you're going to sell it rehabbed. There's where the conversation with me really comes in, and it's handy. Dean, if I put this $10,000 into this house, am I going to be able to get X back out of it? Some cases you can.
Yeah.
A lot of cases you can't.
So typically when you're selling for an investor here, they have a property they want to sell. Are you saying if it's vacant, you have two choices?
Yep.
Sell it as is or make it in rent-ready condition.
That's right.
If it's occupied, you're not going to do anything to it. It's just sell it as it is.
You're
not going to do any other repairs if it's occupied.
No. I'll never suggest doing repairs to an occupied house because
you're not going to be able to change the rent.
And they're just going to sit there and tear it up.
Yeah. So you're talking about in this scenario on a vacant house.
Yeah.
Do I leave it as is, or do I invest the dollars and hope that I'm going to get the dollars that I invest back plus some?
So there's a fine line there. Yes, that's exactly what we're determining.
Okay.
And there's a fine line there of the point of no return and this house is in terrible shape, right? Like I can't market this house. So if you come to me and you say, Dean, it needs a little paint and some flooring, am I going to get that back out? Probably not, right? That's going to be real close. Mm-hmm. That's not going to change your value much.
Right.
If I put a roof and an HVAC and a new water heater, okay.
Yeah.
Now you've done some CapEx work, and I can literally go to somebody and say, hey,
it's got a brand new. They just spent $8,000 on a brand new roof.
So there's and I'm not going to sit here and give you an answer on the definitive on one way or the other. It's a house per house situation because every conversation I have about this, it's a different scenario. Homes are in different conditions, are in different locations, and it just matters different in different areas. So determine first on a vacant home if you're going to sell it as is and sell it rehab. That's a conversation we need to have. I'll pull comps. We'll look at the exact amount of work that's required, and we'll kind of figure that out.
And generally,
this is good.
Generally, are people selling as is, or are they rehabbing? Generally, with people you work with,
as is.
As is. I was going to say, how many of us over 200 over the years?
Yeah.
And I can think on a couple of hands, maybe of ones I've rehabbed. They're almost always as is.
Because no one's going to see the end product like you do. And here's the one thing we run into with investors that try to do that. Great segue into the second part of this.
Good.
You need to figure out the types of conditions you're going to finish it. So if you're the investor that says, hey, I'm going to do a rehab, but I want to sell it and flip this house. Caution. Alec with whatever kind of graphics we can put up. Caution. Yeah. Because if you go into a property and you do a quote rehab, if it's been a rental property for 10 years or 5 years or 2 or even at all, really, it is going to show up. The nicks in the siding or the trim and the whatever's all through the house that is just wear and tear, you are going to struggle unless you completely redo everything.
Yes.
To get the home in that retail owner occupant condition. An owner occupant no doubt takes better care of their home than a tenant does a home that they're renting. So when you go in and you prepare yourself and you say, hey, Dean, I want to fix this thing up, and I want to get the price of 123 Main Street down there of my house here at 456 Main Street. Well, 123 was owner occ, and look at the condition. There's what I want to make sure that I talk to investors about, that they're very clear on. When you flip a house and you rehab a rental home, you need to be very cautious in expecting to get owner occupant full retail value. It's just going to be tough. There's a line in between there, and it falls just short of that owner-occupant value and status. It just does every time, right? And no matter now, if you go in and you do that kind of like a turnkey rehab, like a turnkey provider rehab, then chances are you'll be able to get that.
Right.
I just want to caution you on putting the money into it and thinking to yourself that you're going to be able to get owner-occupant type of return. Consult with your agent, talk about values, determine your listing strategy. How many times have you and I talked about houses to sell over the years and come up with a strategy? Who are we targeting? Who are we going to go after? I think it's very important to consult with your agent. There's not any other agents that do this but me, so you should just email me right away, dean@CrestCore.com, and I can help you get some valuations. But a lot of questions. I would, if you're an investor, I ask the agent how they're going to market the home. Is it just a simple stick it on the MLS? We were just talking about our thousands and thousands of buyers that we've got over the years that we've accumulated. That's one advantage that I believe we have over some other people listing your investment property for you. I've got off-market buyers and people that are just waiting in the cut for stuff that I send them that's not necessarily on the MLS. So that's some of the other kind of advantages of listing a property. But yeah, consult with your agent, determine a strategy, ask a lot of questions, and then I made this second note again, but understand the difference in owner, occupant, and investor. So
I know. We've talked about this a bunch, and we keep doing it. It's like if you go to the doctor, you go to a specialist, not a generalist.
Right. Right. That's
right.
Exactly right.
It's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I know. Here's a good thing: is I was thinking about this the other day. I had a neighbor who was a doctor, and man, he did not like realtors. He did not understand why anybody would use a realtor.
Okay.
And to his point, I just literally heard this stat: 71% of realtors, members of National Association of Realtors, did not sell a house last year in 2024. 71%, which is why the doctor next door said, I don't see any value in realtors, because he knows the 71%. You and I know the specialists, the ones who are dealing in investment properties, the ones who are leading the MLS in the area in transactions and volume. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
They're the ones you want to use.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are creating value for you. So when you're going to list your house, if you don't want to have a bad experience, you got to use Dean or an investor agent, or else you're going to be like the guy's like, 71%. The majority, that says the majority of the realtors, over 2/3 of them, aren't going to be able to help you.
Golly, that's a staggering number.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Because you took all their deals, man.
Yeah. Well, that's 71%, and that's across the country, right?
That's the stat I heard from a reputable source.
What was because there was a second number to that was almost as staggering, that only sold one.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see that. It
was like another 10 or 12%.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 82 and 83% of total agents at one house, 0 or 1.
Yeah. Right. So that's the point. Go to an investor-friendly agent if you're selling an investment property.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Absolutely.
It's something completely different. So next thing, provide some good records and books. The one thing that I will tell you, I know you're I'm going to put a quarter in this machine in a minute and let this thing run. But I knew teeing this up for you would be great. Providing records and good books. Let's talk about how professional management separates bad books and good books. But let me just insert a few quarters into this machine here. and go.
I mean, how many properties have you and I bought over the years when you go to the seller and you're like, hey, it's a property occupied, vacant. Oh, it's occupied. Well, can you show me, the lease or like the ledger?
Yeah.
There it is.
He does this right here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Here. Paid.
That's right. I have a guy. I remember a guy used to pull it out of his front pocket, a little note card, and it had him. And you're just like, oh, man. And that's the plug for professional property management, because they are going to do. Not only are they going to screen tenants and get applications and get security deposits and put people in there and take care of your maintenance and do your collections and stuff, but then they're going to have a record of all this. They're going to have a nice lease that is actually in the lease term. They're going to have the security deposit. They're going to have a ledger that shows the tenant's been paid, caught up, current.
I always ask investors and sellers this question, and when they tell me they don't have great records or what have you, and I'm like, hey, listen, let's think outside the box here. Let's leave ourselves in here and look out. If you had two houses identical, 3 twos, 1,500 square feet, 2-car garage, value the same street, look the same floor plan. Because these builders, same thing. If you had presented the same thing, basically the same price. And one guy had personal records that he kept himself, and one was professionally managed. I'm buying the professionally managed one every single time. Every time.
100 times out of 100.
So if you put that in perspective, like if you start narrowing down and you're eliminating houses and you're running through your diligence work on there, and you've got some options, you're always choosing the one. So if you're a seller, why would you ever make a presentation or present your property without professional management? And if it's you doing it, I'm not saying that you can't show that, but man, you better have something really looking good. It better be a nice spreadsheet, some bank records,
or using some software,
QuickBooks or something. But pulling the card out of your thing here and going, yep, they paid the last few. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and just the tally on the balance. Yeah. But and not to mention the professional property manager, just another plug, they'll schedule these appointments.
Yes.
If it's occupied, and you have we're talking about a buyer who's going to make an offer on an occupied property.
Yeah.
Is going to have an inspection contingency.
That's right.
So who's going to go out there and meet and let them in and meet the tenant? You? Yeah, running around. So
signing leases on the hood of the car.
Guilty.
Not in the hood.
Guilty. On the hood of the car. Guilty, man. Right there. That's me. Been there, done that. Man.
So that's not, we encourage you to get professionally managed management on your homes.
Yes,
CrestCore Property Management's great. We can put you in touch with them. How to, we're talking today about how to list your investment home. We've talked about, it's occupied. We've got it up to market rent. We've talked about our condition. We're going to discuss with Dean if we're going to sell it as is versus putting some money into it. We've gotten it there. We're talking about consulting with your agent and talking about a listing strategy. Who are we going to market to and where are we going? Providing good records and good bookkeeping from professional management is a must. One other thing I like to explain when we list these properties is that, if it's occupied especially, there's no sign and no lockbox in the yard. That's a very common thing in our market. A lot of people ask why you don't do that. We don't want to market a home with a tenant in there with a sign and a lockbox. We wouldn't want anyone to stop and knock on the door and disturb the tenant. And as a matter of fact, in our market, we get homes under contract with no showings. It's based on inspection contingency that we'll allow, a property manager to come and set something up and get inside there. So there's a little bit different kind of nuances when you list but a lot of people might not know that. If the 71% hadn't sold a house, they might not, they go stick a sign in a lockbox out there and it's chaos.
Yeah.
You just,
so that's good. I mean, that's what our market does. And that's very standard, customary, easy.
That's right.
Other agents on both sides understand
very familiar with it. And most sellers understand once you explain it to them.
Yeah, that's good.
Lastly here, I give evaluations on this. I'm going to let you add anything if you want. But I like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm getting emails from investors that are looking to sell in 25. A lot of them are looking to sell this first quarter. Bad property, headache property, I don't care what it is. Just shoot it to me, Dean@CrestCore.com. I'll pull you some comps, give you some evaluations on what we can sell it for. But I hope this was helpful today. I get, since this was, I try to always bring in the topic that's hot, that I'm getting questions about, that's the most relative at the time. And this is what really I've been kind of hit with the last few weeks as the year's gotten started. So hopefully
that's good. I think people, I think they learned a lot. There's a lot of great information.
Yeah.
But the last takeaway right there was, hey, if you have any interest or curiosity at all, just shoot you an email at dean@crestcore.com, and you'll pull something together and just say, here's where you are.
Yeah, no obligation whatsoever. It takes me a few minutes just to do it, and I can let you know what we can sell it for. So anything else?
That's great.
All right, guys, thanks. We'll see you next time.